Hey everybody, Doug Shoemaker here with the Shoemaker Loan Team at USA Mortgage. And I just want to take a second to introduce one of our newest team members. This is Sam. And so Sam's been here for just a little while, and just through some of the conversations that we've had, Sam had mentioned something to me that was like crazy interesting that I never really thought of before. Sam, you want to talk a little bit about what your thoughts were?
Yeah, so something, I'm a recent college graduate, and what you hear a lot, not just in like conversations face to face, but also just around the internet, is that people in my generation, especially my age, buying a home is something you're going to do like 10, 15 years down the road.
Okay.
So yeah, in my mind I was like, maybe in like 10 years I'll be able to buy a house. And then I came here and you guys were always talking about all these different things, and I was like, okay, apparently what I've heard on the street is completely wrong. So yeah.
So we had just closed a loan for someone that was 20 years old, and I think that might have been kind of what spawned it, because Sam was like, wow, wait a minute, she's 20. You can't buy a house when you're 20, can you?
Yeah.
So Sam, let me just ask you really quick, because if you feel that way, there's probably a lot of you guys and girls out there that maybe feel the same way, or maybe there's some questions you have that through you we can help answer. So what are some of the top things you think that you've learned since you've been here that either you already know the answer or I can answer for you today?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that you always hear, or that I would think of, is that especially around our age, we either have really low or just bad credit score. And in my mind, I'm like, well, that automatically disqualifies you from getting a mortgage or a loan or anything like that.
Yeah, so the great news there on both of those fronts are, so no credit score is the easiest one. Number one, there's some no credit score programs out there. So even if you have no scores at all, we might be able to help you. So either through helping you build your credit, like there's ways we can help you with credit builder loans, not a mortgage loan, but there's some local people that I work with that will actually allow you, local banks, that you can put money in the bank every single month into a savings account. And as long as you put that money in your savings account every single month, they'll actually report that to the credit bureau as though it's a loan. So the great thing about that is you get to generate credit for yourself while saving money. That is awesome. So there's like no downfall to that for building credit for yourself. There's some other things that we can do as far as like authorized user accounts and other things to help you establish credit. So even if you've had a few blemishes, somebody's given you a chance and you've maybe lost a job or made a few mistakes, it's okay. We can still help you. There's things we can do to get you on the right track to reestablish your credit again. And because you're so young, it happens pretty quick.
Nice. Very cool.
So what else?
Well, I think a big one I think of is you hear you need 20% down payment. And even if you're going for like kind of a cheaper end, like, maybe $100,000 or less, that's still a lot of money to save up.
Right.
And so that's terrifying to say that.
Yeah, so that's a very, very common misconception that we hear. And honestly, I've heard it more in the last 6 months or so than I really have in a long time. And it blows my mind that people think that you still need 20% down. So depending on where you live, there's all kinds of either intergovernmental grant programs or just general loan programs that will allow you to buy a house with very little down. So FHA, most people misconstrue that with first-time home buyer. Actually, it's the Federal Housing Administration. But FHA in general has one of the lower down payments. They only require 3.5% as a down payment. So sometimes that coupled with a local grant program, currently the Illinois Housing Development Authority has got multiple different programs where you can get anywhere from a few $1,000s up to $7,500 that can be used for your down payment and or closing costs. Now, don't get me wrong, these programs change all the time. So at the time you might be watching this, that $7,500 might not be available, but there's almost always some grant programs for first-time home buyers that can be coupled with like an FHA loan or a conventional loan to help you get as little of a down payment as possible. So yeah, 20% is generally not required, even with conventional loans. Like if you've ever heard of the term Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac, on certain areas, they have loans that only require as little as 3% down. So obviously I don't advise for you to go to Dr. Google and start researching this stuff, because the problem is when you search online, you don't know if the guidelines that you're finding, you don't know if they're that bank's guidelines or they're the real guidelines. And there's a really big difference, because a lot of banks will take the minimum guidelines and then they put their own stuff on top of that. So you always want to make sure you call a local person, generally a mortgage banker, somebody who's top rated, to make sure you're getting your information there, because you want to make sure that the answers you get are the right answers.
Very cool.
What else?
I think student loan debt's a big one, because not only does that maybe affect your credit, it makes it harder to save, but it just kind of seems like this daunting number that would really ding you when trying to get a loan of any kind.
And so it can, right? And this is one more reason why it's very important to make sure that you get a recommendation either from somebody who's done a loan recently, from your real estate agent, because generally they're going to be able to hook you up with the right people, or call us, of course. But these guidelines change all the time. In the last probably 5 or 6 years, we've seen the guidelines change, I think 3 times on what they require us to count against you in terms of a monthly payment. Because one of the biggest things that they look at when you buy a house is something called a debt ratio. Now that debt ratio is all the items that show up on your credit report, plus your new house payment, divided by your gross monthly earnings. So your earnings before taxes or anything like that come out. Well, with student loan debt, most of the time on your credit report, it shows either a 0 monthly payment, or you have what's called a graduated monthly payment, or they have a payment that's based off of your income. So as your income goes up, your monthly payment will go up. Well, the trouble is, if you've got a $10,000 loan and it shows that your monthly payment is $22, that's probably not very accurate. So it's really, really important, again, to make sure and you talk to somebody that's been doing this for a long time, that understands the recent guidelines, so we can accurately calculate that for you. Because there's nothing worse, especially as a first-time home buyer, than getting a pre-qualification from somebody, thinking you're buying a house, being all excited, and then you find out 2 weeks in, after you've spent money on an appraisal, after you've spent money on inspections, that the loan officer might not have calculated that monthly payment accurately. And now the house of your dreams that you thought you were buying, you can't buy. So no is always a no, but you want to get that no before you spend a bunch of money. And then a lot of times, because people, they don't do solely mortgages for a living. They might, work for a place where they do car loans and mortgages and home equities and bank accounts and all kinds of other stuff. Maybe they're just not up on the guidelines. So sometimes we have people come in that think they can't get a loan, and we spend some time with them and find out that they can. So when it comes to that student loan debt, you just always want to call somebody that's been doing this for a very long time, that's highly recommended, because we want to get you the right answer first.
That's cool.
Cool. What else?
Well, I think one of the last ones that I hear a lot, and in my mind is definitely there, is that to pay like a mortgage every month is a lot more expensive than paying rent, and that it's just far cheaper to rent for a long time rather than go ahead and buy a house.
So that's an awesome question, and it's one that I always find kind of fascinating, because we're all price sensitive. We've all been taught our whole lives not really much about mortgages, or especially college age. I mean, they don't really teach you anything in college about buying a house, right? But we've all heard from mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, from somebody, rate. Make sure you get the best rate. Well, if you're renting, you're paying 100% interest. 100% interest, you're making somebody else rich. So again, from a rent versus buy standpoint, the most important thing there, in my opinion, isn't, whether you can afford that payment, or is it cheaper to rent or cheaper to buy. It is, are you prepared? Are you financially responsible enough to make that payment? And as long as you are, then the good drastically outweighs the bad when it comes to that monthly payment or affordability. So start thinking about some little stuff like, freedom. When you're renting this place, you're scared to hang a picture on a wall because you're afraid that I don't want to put a hole in the wall because I might get in trouble, or can I have my friends over, or what if my music's too loud? All these little things. Where when you are buying a home, it's your home. I mean, you've got that freedom. It's just awesome. So from day one, not only are you no longer paying 100% interest, but now you're building equity in an actual asset. So every month that you live there, you're building equity in this house. So number 2, rental rates nationwide are drastically increasing. I mean, we've seen not this high here locally, but as a national average, rental rates have gone up by like 40%, and they're going to keep going up, especially later down the road as homeownership becomes more and more expensive, as rates go up, as property values increase. You're going to have more and more people that are going to continue to rent, and rental rates are going to keep going up. So now more than ever, I mean, rates, they've gone up a little bit in the last 6 months, but they're still at historic lows. And so literally for the same, or in a lot of cases, less money than you're even paying for rent, you can own your home. The biggest thing is, as long as you're financially responsible, that's what matters.
Very cool.
So hey, to recap guys, number one, you don't have to have 20% down. There's programs out there with as little as zero money down as long as we structure it properly for you. You don't have to have an 800 credit score. I mean, with FHA, you can go into the 500 credit score numbers. Generally it requires a little bit more of a down payment, but just know that you don't have to have an 800 credit score. And you know, you don't have to make $1 million a year. You know, we want to make sure that your income level is such that we don't put you in a position where we could hurt you, because the last thing we want to do is put you in a bad financial position. But you don't have to have all those huge crazy things in order to buy a house. So if you or a friend or a family member is in a position where you've been renting for a while and you'd rather start putting your money into something that's going to actually become an asset for you, make sure and give us a call. You can reach my team, including most nights and weekends, at 618-795-0790. Or if you want to apply online, go to applywithDougShoe.com. And Sam will do an amazing job of putting that down there or up there or somewhere so you can go there. With any questions whatsoever, always reach out.